Hello and welcome to a Blender Crash course. I'm Matthias at Ferocious Industries. The goal for this course is to get more people using Blender, more people using Unity, have beginners less scared of it, stuff like that. Blender is a free program. It can do a lot of things. It can do CGI movies completely within. It can do 2D cartoons, 3D cartoons. You can create 3D objects for 3D printing. Each one of these little squares here can be converted into a real-world measurement, like inches, centimeters, meters, stuff like that. So that's really cool. We are going to be using it to make game assets, like animated characters, props, icons, and sprites for our game worlds. So, without further ado, let's get started. So when you first open Blender, you're going to have a scene that looks just like this. You'll get a mesh, this default cube, a camera, and a light. Now upon looking at this for the very first time, I urge you to think about your microwave, think about your dishwasher, think about your washing machine. You know where the start button is, you know where maybe the option for cotton. All I'm saying is, don't think you need all these buttons. You need to know where a few of them are. We'll go over all the important stuff, and you'll know how to use what you need to use to make a game asset, basically. But don't look at this and freak out and worry about having to know what all of this does, because you absolutely do not. So first things first, let's learn how to use the viewport camera. So the viewport camera is not the same as this camera right here. The viewport camera is what I can see right now. So what you're looking at in your scene. So to move the camera, the best thing to do is use your mouse. So your middle mouse wheel, a very universal tool. You can zoom in and out by scrolling the wheel. If you hold the middle mouse button down, the mouse wheel down, you can rotate around the center of your pivot, basically, and we can change that pivot. If we hold Shift and the middle mouse button at the same time, we can pan our scene and change our pivot point for our camera. So now the camera will rotate over here. It's good to mention that you can also use this here. Just click and drag it, and it'll do the same thing as you're holding the middle mouse button down. You can also click one of these axes and it will snap, and that's what we're going to use right now to recenter our camera. So if you prefer not to use this here, you can also use your numpad or this little view option down here. Click cameras, viewpoint, and here's all your different angles for your camera. So we can go top, bottom, front, back, right, left, and we can do this with our numpad as well. So 1 is the front. Now all we want to do to recenter this is hold Shift and the middle mouse button down to pan, and we're going to put this blue line right between these play buttons here on the playback, the timeline. Okay, so do that. And we're going to go 3 and go to the side view, so you can see it's way over here. So just hold Shift, middle mouse button, and put that right back in the middle, in between these play buttons, somewhere around the center is perfectly fine. If you want to get perfect, you can zoom right in, right? But unnecessary. So anyway, with that around the center, now we can go around our object, just like our object will stay in the center of our scene now. It's our center of our camera pivot. So that's how you move the camera around and do that. Also good to note, when you're using the numpad to flip around, you can see exactly which one you're on right here. You can hold Control and it'll go to the opposite of what you did. So I press 1 for front, Control 1, and it goes to the back. Same with the right side. Hit 3 for Control 3, it'll go to the left. Another thing is it'll always be an orthographic when you snap the camera at all these different angles here. One way to change that is you can either just click your middle mouse button and move, and it'll change it back to perspective, or you can hit the number 5 on your numpad, and it'll switch between orthographic and perspective exactly the way you're looking at it. Now, if you don't understand the difference between orthographic and perspective, I can explain that really quick. So, no need to follow here, I'm just going to prove something. So, this cube is a perfect cube, meaning this distance right here and this distance at the back is the exact same, even though in perspective it doesn't look the same. So if I take these and move them over close, you can see that it's shorter. It looks shorter because it's further off in the distance, but it is not in fact shorter. Now in orthographic mode, it'll always be exactly the length that it is in appearance. So if you don't want this to look shorter because it is not, you stay in orthographic. If you want this to look shorter to see something in perspective, it's further back in the distance, so it is going to be a little bit shorter than this one, and that's where you get these diagonal lines and stuff like that that make things look like our eyes actually see them. That's perspective. There's a few different ways you can see this mesh. So for our viewport, we can go up here. This is your viewport shading, so it's basically how you're seeing your object. So right here is Wireframe. You might see this a lot. It's very useful in edit mode when we go to actually edit our mesh. This is the standard solid, and you can change this, the look of this, the solid in particular, by clicking this little drop down arrow and going to matte cap. This is a fun little trick. click this little sphere and you'll get a bunch of different quick default materials to just basically drape over your object. Instead of seeing this default gray, you can see it in any other kind of way. Now don't mistake this for being the actual texture or the actual material that your game object will be. This is only a viewport option to quickly check your mesh. So if you were creating a human, maybe you'd use this one, or this one, maybe more there. But basically just to view it before you actually unwrap it and texture it. This is not going to influence anything about our game object itself. Just to note that. So this is just a quick view. This will not actually be a materialization of our object. Anyway, just going to change that back to the default. Go up to the next one. You can see this one is a material preview. So the light won't actually have any effect. So if we had a texture over this, so if we had this unwrapped and we colored it, we would see it here, but we wouldn't have any light influence. Now if you want the light influence, you click on this rendered. This is the rendered view right here. Now our light will have influence. Now you can change the shadows and stuff like that. Another way to change this is by hitting the letter Z and you get this little wheel. And you can change it to wireframe, rendered, material, solid really quickly. So you can select different things by using the left mouse button, right? Camera, mesh, light. Just to go over a few of all the simple hotkeys. The first one is move. So you saw me move the light. To do that, you just hit the letter G while you have the light selected and you can move the light around. Now, anytime you go to do something, move, rotate, scale, extrude, stuff like that, you can just right click and it'll snap it back to where it was. So I probably double right click there, yeah. So you just right click and it'll snap it back as if, kind of like a quick undo, like I don't want to do this anymore. If you're kind of moving something around, just right click and it'll snap it back. As well as you hit G, you can snap this to the X, Y, and Z axis. So if I hit Z, it'll only go up and down now, right? If I hit X, it'll only go across the X axis, Y, it'll only go across the Y axis. Now that axis snap works for a lot of different hotkeys, so we'll probably be using that a lot. Next one is rotate, so just hit R and it'll rotate the object, right? And do the same thing, hit Y and it'll only rotate it on the Y axis no matter what I do. X, same thing, Z, same thing, right? Scale is S, so scale means basically size up, size down. So scale, right, we make this bigger, smaller. We can snap that to an axis as well and make it longer in one direction, right? Just right click to get out of that again. Another very good one is if you have done something, like say in any of these modes, if you really want to do what you're doing, like say I want to actually rotate this like this, I just click, left click, and that puts it exactly the way I have it. So now that's our mesh now, right? If you want to undo, just hit Control Z. Very important to know that one. So say I rotate this, I left click out here, Control Z, undo will actually undo selections as well, which is useful. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but it is useful. So Control Z, undo that selection, and I hit it again, and it'll undo my rotation. Now, if I want to redo that, I just hit Control Shift Z, right? Now that is a little bit different in Unity. It's Control Y, but we'll get into that at another time. So Control Shift Z will redo, and that does the selections as well, the same thing. So just hit Control Z, put that back. Another very good one is duplicate. So by selecting this cube, I can hit Shift D, and now there's another one attached to my cursor, right? So if I don't want to move it anywhere, I want it in the same place, I just right click, right? Now it's in the same place. There is in fact two cubes there, so if I scale this one up a little bit and hit Shift Z, that's a quick wireframe, I believe. Yes, Shift Z is quick wireframe, but you can also just hit Z and go to wireframe. So we have two cubes now, right? Let's say I don't want this one anymore. I could undo a few times, or I could just hit X. That's the delete option. So in object mode, you only have one option, and that's to get rid of the object you have selected. We can do the same thing with the light, X, delete, do the same thing with the camera, X, delete. Now those aren't gone forever as long as you have your undo button, right? So there we are. The next thing is, say you accidentally deleted this cube and you can't undo and get it back. That's okay. Hit Shift A in object mode, by the way. Important to note, this is where you can change this, and the only way to actually get anything other than object mode is by selecting something other than a camera or a light, like a mesh or a curve. Anyway, Shift A, go to Mesh. Don't worry about all this. Go to Mesh, and here's your default object. So say we don't want a cube. Say we want a sphere. Go to UV sphere. Icosphere will be triangles, right? UV sphere will be quadrilaterals, which is faces with 4 vertices, right? It's a simple thing. So I'm just going to delete this now, go back to the cube, add a cube. Okay, now we have our default scene completely back to normal. So that's going to be the end of this episode, guys. That's introduction and navigation to Blender. Next time we're going to be doing modeling. I won't say like and subscribe. I don't pay a lot of attention to my YouTube channel, to be completely honest. best thing to do would be head to ferociousindustries.com and check out some free games, some free 3D assets. Maybe you don't want to make them all yourself. You can get tons of stuff from me free on the Unity Asset Store. Thanks for watching, guys.